Hello everyone, this week we're going to be learning about semantics. This is the last session of the linguistic sessions. We started with phonology, we then learned about morphology, we then looked more holistically and looked at syntax, which looks at phrases, and now we're going to the deepest form or level of linguistics, which is called semantics, which is all about meaning. So our objectives of this session, of this topic, is for you to distinguish between different aspects of semantics that we're going to talk about today, to identify semantic word relationships, to recognize culturally defined word meanings, and also to be able to describe the use of semantics in a written sample, which is something that you will be doing in your assignment B, your written language analysis project. Okay, so let's begin with meaning in linguistics. Semantics is basically the study of linguistic meaning, where we will explore a variety of meanings and meaning relationships that phrases and sentences represent in a particular language. So to determine exactly what we mean by sort of meaning, let's look at the sentence that has been spoken by somebody. Okay. So the sentence says, "Those chicks are really hot." And we can think about meaning in language in four different ways. Okay, we have the linguistic meaning, the social meaning, the affective meaning, and the non-literal meaning. Okay, so the first way is the linguistic meaning, or information that we derive from the sentence, or basically what real-world objects or concepts this person is describing in their sentence. So if we think about the meaning that this sentence could have, there are two ways, two different meanings. The first one is the picture that you see on the left-hand side, which represents four ladies who are attractive. Okay, so if somebody says those chicks are really hot, that is one meaning that that sentence could have. If you look on the right-hand side, you'll see a picture of baby chicks, literally baby chicks, that are sitting under a heat lamp, and so they are quite hot, right? So the linguistic meaning, there are actually two represented by this sentence. The second way that we can think about meaning is the social meaning that we derive from this sentence, such as the information that is given to us about the social nature of a person, or of the context where the expression is being said. So, what can we tell about the person's dialect, or the context that they are based in, just from this statement, right? Is it a standard dialect, right? It depends on the context. And who do you think would be saying this? Do you think it would be somebody who's older, maybe 50, 60, 70, or somebody who's younger, maybe in their teens or in their 20s? You can also determine or think about if this person is saying this, and then again, depending on the different meanings, right? The context that they're in, right? Where would you picture this person to be who says this? Some people might say if the meaning of the sentence is the attractive woman, right? They might be with friends in an informal context, right? Definitely not with maybe, for example, a partner's parents, for example. Okay, so the third level of meaning that is contained in language has to do with the affective meaning. And this is basically the information that we can derive, which tells us about the person's feelings, their attitudes, or their opinions based on what they're saying and the context that they're in. So there are two different sort of affective meanings that go along with the two different meanings of the sentence. In the first meaning, where the person is calling these women attractive, what we can tell is that this person is enthusiastic, perhaps, optimistic, right? If we were to think about the second meaning, right, where it's literally baby chicks who are under a heat lamp, we can probably tell effectively, in terms of their affect, their emotions, that the person might be worried or might be in a sort of an observatory mode. Okay, and then the fourth level of meaning that is sort of engaged in language is the non-literal meanings, right? So the metaphorical meanings or the idiomatic expressions. And here, as I said before, there are two different meanings. Chicks is a term that is sort of a slang term that has been used not only to describe baby chickens, but also in a slang way to describe attractive females. The same thing with hot. Hot has taken on two different meanings. The literal meaning, meaning warm, and then the figurative meaning, or the metaphorical meaning, to mean attractive. Okay, so let's look at some other sentences to see if we can pick up the different levels of meaning. What can you tell me about the linguistic meaning of the sentence, Tom has a sharp mind? What we can tell is that it means that, a person, Tom, a male, is intelligent, right, from a sharp mind. If I were to show you this second box, and we're going to compare these, so Tom has a sharp mind versus Tom sure has a sharp mind, right? What social meaning can we derive from the second sentence? What can you tell me about the person who uttered that sentence? We can tell that perhaps the first one was maybe said in a more formal context. The second one was more informal. We can also tell that the first one is stated in a standard dialect, whereas the second one might be coming from somebody who speaks a southern US dialect, right? Because that sure right there tips us off into that. And as I said before, this one, that second sentence, Tom sure has a sharp mind, seems to be in a more informal setting, perhaps surrounded by friends. Okay, we can also talk about the affective meaning, right? So if we compare Tom has a sharp mind versus Tom has a sharp tongue, the affective meaning here is very different in those two sentences. In the first one, it's a positive sentence, right? It has a positive connotation. And we're going to talk a little bit more about connotation a little bit later. The second one, Tom has a sharp tongue, we can tell it has a negative connotation. It's saying something bad or about the person, okay? So basically, notice how much information you need to know in order to correctly understand the meaning in each of these particular sentences. So as well as learning about the other subsystems when learning a language, such as the grammatical ones, the phonology, the syntax, the morphology, students also have to know and learn about the many layers of meaning and these types of information that the statements provide. About the context that is being described. Okay, so you as the ELL's teacher need to be specific about these different levels of meaning, and help them understand how to go about understanding and navigating the meaning of English in different contexts, both for the purposes of school and also for the purposes of socializing, such as during lunchtime, during playtime. Okay, so we're going to talk more about these different levels of meaning today. Okay, so the first way we can conceptualize meaning is by associating a word or a sentence to its referent, or the entity that it refers to. The referent is, for our purposes, the concept that we form in our minds when we use or hear or read words and phrases like the ones we'll talk about today. So let's talk about reference, right? The concept associated with the use of a word or phrase. So if I were to say the word feet, no matter who I'm saying it to, the picture that is going to appear in the person's head when I say feet is usually going to look the same across everyone, because the word foot has a very specific reference, right? So you're going to picture a foot with 5 toes, and even though the skin color of that foot might vary, right, depending on who it is, the object that is being pictured is similar across. So the same with a phrase such as the man reading the newspaper. And now it's based on a phrase rather than just a word like foot. But still, with a phrase like the man reading the newspaper, everyone is going to picture a man, right, a male person, holding up a large newspaper, sort of a large black and white, right? This person might have glasses or not, but what everyone is going to be imagining in their mind is that image. And so even a phrase like the man reading the newspaper has a referent attached to it. This is different to objects that we cannot picture in the same way. Okay, so words that do not have reference are those that have entities that cannot be seen, okay, such as emotions like love or hate, or words such as freedom or anger. So if I were to say the word love to you and ask you what you picture, you might picture a heart, a red heart. Somebody else might picture a man and a woman kissing. Another person might picture a man and a man kissing. Another person might picture puppies. Okay, so the word love, it has meaning. I mean, every word has meaning, but what it doesn't have is it doesn't have a referent. It doesn't have one specific image that everybody sort of conjures up in their mind when you say the word. So let me give you an example of words that have both a referent and a sense. So tangible real-world entities such as a crocodile, right? If I say crocodile, everybody has a sort of a similar referent that goes with that, a similar picture that pops up in their head. Same with feet, same with the man is reading the newspaper. We even have imagined entities such as a unicorn or a fairy. These represent words that have both a referent and sense, right? So a unicorn, even though it doesn't exist in the real world, we still have a very particular image that is connected to the word unicorn. Same thing with fairy. Again, remember, a fairy might be pictured in a different color dress, but usually most people are going to picture a very small female that has wings and that's wearing something. Okay, and that is sort of smaller and it flies around. And because that concept has such a very specific picture attached to it, it's stated, we can say that that word has a referent as well as sense. Here are some examples that only have sense, no referent, right? So just remember that every single word in the world, in English and in any language, has sense. It has a meaning attached to it. Now, whether it has a reference, whether we all conjure up the same image, is very different. So in words such as these, such as abstract entities like love or hate or freedom or anger, those are words that we all conjure up something different in our mind. There's no specific image attached to that. We also have non-existing entities that don't have reference, okay? Think about a phrase like the King of America. America doesn't have a king, so there's no referent that would go with that. There's no picture in our mind that we conjure up that is similar across the board. The same thing with the first female American president. There has never been a female American president, and therefore the image that you conjure up is not going to be the same across, right? It doesn't exist in reality. There are also examples of phrases or words where the referent is based on the sense. The referent is based on sense and context. So if you think about the word American president, if I say American president right now, we all think of Barack Obama because that is who the president is right now. But when the election starts again and somebody new is voted into the White House, our reference is going to change when I say American president, right? Just as it would if I was asking you in 1993, right? The American president, that referent would be different. Same thing with rubber, for example. So rubber has very different meanings depending on where you are. If I were to say that in South Africa or in England, what people would picture in that society, in those societies, would be an eraser, right? An eraser is what pictured. But you say that in another context, in the American context, and people conjure up the image of a condom. Okay, so just think about the words have different meanings depending on where you are, depending on the time, and especially words that don't have a reference are sometimes harder to teach your ELLs because there's not an image that you can show them, and could also differ, right, based on where you are.